Alright, hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through some of the highlights of the last few months and just kind of talking about my favorite parts and then kind of what exactly I want to highlight. So before I get into too many details, time for the intro. I kind of made this in the style of a bit of a Q&A of some of the more common questions you guys might have for me. What I'm going to do is kind of do that in the style of a Q&A and then share some pieces of footage and stuff that unless you're kind of watching the shorter videos, you probably haven't seen before. And then at the end, there's going to be stuff that nobody's seen yet. The first question is, why no videos for 4 months? So if you guys have noticed, there really hasn't been any video content at all for the last 4 months. Sorry if I sound a little congested. I got into some dust yesterday and I'm still kind of stuffed up. During the in-person, I just didn't have honestly, the energy more than the time. I did have quite a bit of time during that time. There was some periods of time though where there was a lot of prep work to do for the labs, even though I spent like 2 weeks in, what was it, end of February, or yeah, it was about 2 weeks preparing for the non-sterile lab. I'm so happy we did that work actually ahead of time because it would have made the in-person even more stressful than it already was, and that was the worst period of the entire thing was, or I guess the entire program was the last 2 months in person of actual classes and labs and stuff. It's probably going to be not for the reason that you guys think. I really liked the labs. It's just that when it comes to like the stress levels, it was the worst because of the types of exams that we were having and then having to do a bunch of remedials. I had to do pretty much almost every remedial and it was just adding up. Add to that, I was exhausted from everything in person. So it was the hardest part of the program, which I'm going to get into the next question. During the last 2 months of practicum, during practicums, I also spent my editing time that I do for making videos on Sundays. I was editing my weekly reflections during that time. So it actually worked out really well for me to switch from doing videos to that, but it meant that I didn't have time to basically do the videos, which is okay because I really didn't have any footage because I'm obviously not going to vlog when I'm on practicum. Can't do that. I actually started most of them on Saturday. I started some on Fridays, but for the most part, I did a bulk of it on Saturday. Took the Saturday afternoon to myself, an evening, and then Sunday I would like edit it and then submit it so that I had the rest of the weekend to do my own thing. So it was probably around a couple hours each day on the weekend. And what was nice is that besides the one weekend during my community practicum, I didn't have to work weekends. So that was really, really nice. It meant, though, when I did my hospital rotation that I was actually doing 8.5-hour shifts to make up for my convocation day because you have to make up the time for that. So anything that you miss, you have to make up the time for. So it's including the stat holiday in May, which is really annoying, but I'll get into that another time. Hardest part, I mentioned this before, but definitely the 2 weeks of the last 2 weeks of the in-person. So we not only had our last, what I would call the exit exam for math. It was just kind of like a final must pass is what they called it, but it consisted of 2 parts. So there was a normal written portion and then there was a checking portion. So we basically had stations kind of like they do for OSPE practice or other different types of exams in the program. And then we had to find the error if there was one. There wasn't always one. We had to find the error in the calculations and show how we would correct it. or I guess how we would tell the person to correct it. So they were not only looking at, can you do the math? Can you correct when there's a mistake? But how would you explain this to somebody? Because one of the biggest things when you're a technician is your ability to be able to talk with many different types of people. So you're talking with patients, so you have to adapt communication for them. You're talking with assistants, so you have to adapt communication with them. And then you're talking with all of the other different types of healthcare practitioners, and each one of them may or may not know what you're talking about if you use the wrong terminology. So it's a really unique kind of in-between area. And I find that's more the case in community because you're talking with that such a diverse population with their understanding of medical terminology. I actually enjoy that quite a bit about it, being having to adapt your communication. And you find you're doing that too when you're trying to explain to people like what a pharmacy technician actually does, because most of the population isn't aware of like, well, what can a pharmacy technician do compared to a pharmacist? That's usually the question I get asked from most people. But for some people, they're like, well, what's the difference between a pharmacy technician and an assistant? So you're gonna have to be able to answer that. I've actually answered that in a previous video, so I won't do that now, but because it takes a little bit to explain the difference. So now I'm actually going to cut to the video of probably one of my favorite parts of this whole experience over the last 4 months. This was the time I knew I was going to graduate. So it's when I found out that I had passed both portions of my math test. Alright everyone, it's been a while since I made any type of video, and it's just because this in person has been a lot. I'm gonna have to make a full-length YouTube video to fully talk about it when I have the chance. But I passed everything, and I'm so relieved. The last couple of days has been probably the worst with remedials. It's been just constant, and they were really piling up. The stress was really adding up. I think I woke up 3 times last night in cold sweat just from like the stress of it. So I'm happy, so relieved that everything is good. So yeah. It's kind of hard to process all of the emotions actually right now. So, but yeah, I just wanted to share that. So, like I said, I'll share more thoughts when I get a chance. Okay, now that we're back and got to experience that loveliness again, I never get sick of watching that video just because it was, up until that point, I wasn't even sure if I was going to graduate or not. So those must pass exams are extremely stressful. And now, getting into the best part. So I actually said the best part was the entry to practice ceremony. So this was actually our kind of own individual graduation ceremony and celebration that we had at the end of our in-person all the way back at the end of April. So the convocation portion of the whole celebrations with SAS Polytech is actually like, it's a school-wide thing, but this entry to practice ceremony was really, it felt really special because it was just the pharmacy technician program. So I want to share a few photos here of the Code of Ethics signing, and of course, I'm gonna just share photos of myself because I don't have permission to share the other photos. And I'm really picky about that, being on with privacy and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, here's just a couple of photos from that of me getting to celebrate. I don't know if you can tell how tired I am, but at this point I was definitely ready to come back home. We had about a week before practicum started at this point. One of the common things I heard from my class was we wish we could have skipped this week so that we could have been done practicum before the end of convocation and had convocation be the very end of it. Although I agree, it did give me time to move back home, which is where I was going to be kind of out of home base while I was on practicum. So I was okay with this, but in a way, I almost wonder if it would have been best too if we had have skipped basically that week and finished so that convocation could have marked actually the final end of everything, because it didn't. So when we convocated, we actually had 4 days left. Most of us anyways had 4 days left of practicum still. So that was unfortunate timing because it made like Friday feel, it's like, oh, well, everything's finished. But it made convocation feel like we weren't really done yet because we still had those hours left and many of us still had to do our final evaluations and all of that. Getting into that, the second best part of the entire last few months was definitely convocation. So it was not only nice to celebrate such an amazing accomplishment, but going to see everyone again was probably my favorite part. And so I'm gonna end with me with a video that my dad actually took of me walking across the stage.
Ashley Stuart.
Way to go, Ashley!
I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.
So with the marking of convocation, this obviously means that I am done with the school portion of the program. What you guys may not realize is this isn't the very end. It's actually just the end of the very first step that is required to become a registered pharmacy technician in Saskatchewan. So here's the steps. Now, the steps of how I do the SPTA, PEBCs, and jurisprudence, they're not set in stone, but essentially we're here on it. So, like, there's a lot left to go. Now that school's over, Ashley, what are you going to be sharing? I'm actually hoping to share a lot more now that school's done. I will likely be able to have a lot more time now to not only vlog, but I do want to vlog this next part in quite a bit of detail. I'm not going to have a lot of people around me during this period of time when I'm doing my prep and all of that. So I'm actually hoping to share quite a bit of detail for this, not only with family who's following along, but for my own just records as well, kind of share the ups and downs that I'm sure is going to be involved as I go through these next big steps, because now this part gets real. All of the stuff upcoming is going to cost money to do it. I'm feeling pretty good about it, honestly. I know that Polytech prepares us quite well. It was shown to me during the practicum as to how well they prepare us for being entry to practice ready. I will be showing prepping for the PEBCs, SPTA, and jurisprudence. I will be doing my best to share in as much detail as I feel is not only fair and allowed, but to not break any, confidentiality of what's actually involved in these different programs. Also, I will be able to do some of it at work, so I won't be vlogging that part of it for the SPTA. And I will not be able to share any answers or details with, once I write the PEBCs. I already know I'm going to get comments about, well, what kind of stuff should I be studying for the PEBCs? I'm already telling you guys I'm not going to answer that question because you have to sign a confidentiality agreement that you're not going to talk about anything for details on the PBCs. I already know that. We've already kind of discussed that in school. And anyone who's taken a program should already know the answer to that question, that they shouldn't be sharing that kind of details. And I really think it's important to keep the integrity of courses and all of that and not have people that have taken it in for, later years have an advantage because they talked with other people who have already written it and all of that. I definitely agree with them on that. And so because of that, I'm going to be treating it exactly like how I would want it to be treated in the future. I don't want them to have an advantage, and that's not right for the profession. Sure, it might help somebody pass an exam, but it's not right to be doing that either. Like I said, now that I have time again, I hope to get back to my weekly videos again too. So the first couple weeks, because I don't know exactly what order that I'm going to be doing everything in yet, I'm probably not going to have a lot to share besides the moving process, so that's probably what I'm going to start with. So I will be moving to a new town actually, because I've had a contract signed since about mid-March. It's gonna be kind of taking it easy as well as preparing to move. So maybe I'll share some of the things that I do with preparing to move. Haven't really decided yet. And then absolutely I will definitely share moving, because I'm hoping this is gonna be my last move for quite a while. So it's been a lot of back and forth, especially with the traveling. My practicums were an hour commute one way. I hated that. It's one of the things I learned about myself during this whole thing, was that definitely can't have a commute. Now, in Saskatchewan, it's hard to have a commute as it is, because winter driving can last 6-7 months sometimes, depending on the year. And you don't want to be driving like that, because you miss a lot of work and school and all of that if you have a commute, just because roads can be bad enough that you have to not go because the roads are closed or travel is not recommended. So, yeah, it's a big deal. A commute may work in some places in the world that has nicer weather than what we do, but it definitely does not work here. Maybe 10-15 minutes would be okay, like kind of living on the outskirts of a town or whatever and then commuting in. I might be able to manage that, but not anything else. What else I'm gonna probably be doing is kind of talking about, once I find out what the next steps are, how I'm gonna approach that. I've already kind of been looking into what I might want to think about trying to use to practice for PEBCs. I think I'm probably most focused on the PEBCs just because jurisprudence exam, I feel like once I get back into community practice, that's going to be an advantage for me. So a lot of the legislation impacts the community pharmacy part of it, not so much the hospitals. But anyways, guys, thanks for joining me for this one. I know it's been a long time, but like I said, I'm hoping to get back to more consistent video content now that I have the time to do it. I really do enjoy this, and I do want to document this next few steps, as it is going to be really big and emotional and all of that. I'm probably just going to show the prep work for everything at this point, just because it's going to be really difficult to talk about. I might share some of the details of what I'm studying, but and kind of how I am going to use the blueprint to maybe approach the PVCs, because that's what you essentially do, is you use the blueprint to do that. And I'm very familiar with the entry to practice competencies now, because we had to use those so much over the last 2 months to prepare our reflections each week. So yeah, let's see where the next few months takes me. I've got 6 months from the time that I start at my new job, which to get registered. So it'll probably be January, February of 27 before I'm actually like fully registered with SCPP. So that's if everything goes smoothly. Like I said, I feel pretty good about the SPTA, and I feel pretty good about the jurisprudence. It's going to be the PEBCs, if anything, and especially the hospice, just because I get so nervous having people watch me do things when I'm in an exam. I have a bad exam anxiety as it is, and having people watch everything that I'm doing. I definitely think the hospice might be the hardest part for me, but I think the only thing you can do is just prepare for as many different scenarios as possible, and I'm hoping that work will help me do that. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining me this week, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye for now.
I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.